So what is this channel about? It's about making the best malted barley a person can. You're going to learn how to take the barley and turn it into a malted with different toast to be able to make the beers that you want. In the beginning, you'll learn how to sort, where to buy, how to hydrate it, what to look for. We'll then go through the drying phase, and then finally the roasting or toasting stage. There are many different ways we can do this with ovens, with grills, and each one has its own reasons. Some of them are easier, some of them are faster, but the end result is always a little different. So through this process, you're going to see each step and how you can easily and have a good time making your own malted barley. It's a very simple process. They've been doing it for centuries and centuries. The Egyptians, and as far back as our Arcadians, have been making beer. So it doesn't take technology. It just takes the know-how to do it. It's actually very easy. And if you can make beer, you can definitely malt barley. It'll be a great experience, and I hope you join me. And please subscribe. It helps me. And I will have from time to time a downloadable PDF file, so you're able to actually have a visual, to put on your iPhone or to just have to print out. Make it easier for you to follow along or just have with you if you want to go back and forth between the videos and your process. I hope these things help you out, and I appreciate your subscription. Thank you. So what are we doing today? We're making caramel malts, or sugar malts. And what we did was took them off the drying stage. If you don't remember, you can go back to the drying videos, and I told you exactly when those roots are just starting to get dry. That's when we pull it off and make the caramel malts, or the sugar malts. And we put it on there, and we make sure the fire is hot enough. And I put my hand close to where the pan's going to be, and I measured about 6 seconds. That's about the perfect temperature, because that's enough temperature to where when it hits the pan, it's not going to burn the berries, and yet it's going to accumulate the heat as time goes on. So what we do then is we put it on, and we just keep stirring it. And then we wait till all the sugars it starts to sweat, and then as it sweats, the sugar residue comes to the surface. And then we just keep cooking it, and then the sugars will caramelize as the heat increases, and that's how we get those sugars. Now those sugars are made to stay in the beer, so the yeast cells are not able to eat those sugars because they're a starch that's unedible to the yeast. So this will give you more body, it'll give you a bigger mouthfeel, all the characteristics of the caramel malts. 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. So as you can see, it's still at this stage, and we pulled it off first. We pulled it off first because at this stage, all the sugars the roots have dried a little bit and hold in all the sugars. And now we're putting it on the fire, on the heat. Now I'm using outside because I can use all kinds of woods to flavor the berries as I'm doing it. But this is going to be this is going to be your sugar malts or caramel malts, and you can see they're already getting warm. The bottom, I counted for about 5 or 6. That is hot enough. That should be within that 75 to 80 degree Celsius, or above 170 and Fahrenheit. And what that does is it has two different kinds of sugars, as we were talking about before. We have the sugars that create alcohol, which need to be lower. They need to be about 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 degrees Celsius. And we'll just keep rotating this until it's completely, till we can see the sugars are on the outside of the berries. Okay, now you can actually start smelling it and see how when I flip these, see how they're turning kind of wet? You see how they look a little moist? They're sweating. That's an excellent sign. So what that means is this is actually the sugars coming out of the berries and being driven to the surface so that they can be caramelized. All that sugar now is coming out, and it should be at the exact temperature now, because that's what that means. When you see that, that's at that temperature. I'll show you that in just a second. And now we just want to keep turning it, because what we want is we want this to go evenly. Now the fire is mostly in the middle, and what we're doing is we're using this kind of like a wok. And in a wok, what they do is in the center is all the heat. So we want to move it from there to the side and from the side in. If there's something that we think is done, we move it to the sides so it has less heat. Now I actually have a huge piece of metal that I use to do big batches. This is just a regular pan, as you can see, and I'll show you even with a smaller one a little later. That any batch is good. This is a pretty good sized batch for the first one, and as you can see, it's just caramelizing as we go along here. Get the temperature. Now you can see the temperature. It's at the perfect, between 75 and 80 degrees. This is the perfect temperature so that the sugars will caramelize and stay at this temperature now, and everything will cook evenly, and we just keep rotating it until it gets to the perfect consistency, and we can see that nice caramelization. One thing to know about these berries is that once they get warm, they actually stay extremely warm. They hold their temperature for a long period of time. So you don't want a big fire. You want a fire that, like I said, you count about 6 seconds. It should be around the perfect temperature. And what happens is the temperatures in the berries, because they're liquid and because they have liquid inside and the sugars, they continually get warmer and warmer and warmer. And soon they don't actually lose any heat. They just keep building heat. Well, we don't want it to get too hot, because if we let it get too hot, then they'll start burning. Now that you can do this, you just keep doing this for the different levels that you want, but that depends on the time and also the temperature, and you should be able to feel it. And as you can see how it's getting drier and drier, and it gets it's pulling out those sugars, and pretty soon it'll start caramelizing in just a few minutes here, and then we'll be done with the first level. Then we can go for different levels after that point. It's almost too hot to touch. 3 ways of doing the barley. You can do it in an oven, like a old brick oven, like this one. We actually make bread and stuff in there. That's what I made it for. But it works perfect as an oven if you want to do small batches. You just put it in at the right temperature and just leave it, and this will stay for hours and hours, whatever temperature you put it at. I also have a wood-burning stove that I cook my beer in. So it's all wood, and it's all outside. It doesn't cause any problems, as in humidity inside and smells and bothering other people. So this is real nice. So this is my preferred method because, like I said, you can use different woods for different flavors, and you can really regulate the temperature pretty well. You can either keep the fire low, or you can move the pan or the pot higher, and that will make the temperature change to the right exact temperature. Now, a couple things to look out for. If you start hearing your berries pop, they'll go pop, pop, pop. That means that your fire is too hot. If it's too hot, it's like a it'll pop the berries because the air inside gets too hot too fast and then it explodes. If you hear that it's too hot, that's one thing to look out for. Use your senses. Look at the berries, make sure they're not starting to get black, starting to burn. These are things you have to make sure that aren't happening, because those are going to add a flavor to your beer that you may want, but for right now, we're just trying to make a base caramel malt. And so that's why you have to kind of pay attention to it. Use your nose, the aromas that are in the air. You can smell toastiness, like if you would be cooking couscous or some kind of seed, like pumpkin seeds or whatever. You get that kind of nutty smell. You'll know when you can start smelling the burntness of something. These are all signs, and if that happens, if it gets too hot, you just raise it above the fire a little bit, cools it off, and then make sure that it's at the right temperature. Check your temperature, and you should be fine. If you're not getting any of this, it's taking forever. It means it's too high, or your fire is not big enough. So you either need to increase the fire or lower it lower until you reach that perfect temperature. It's just one movement here and there, because wherever your fire is, that's where you do it. This whole process takes less than 40 minutes. So just by being patient, you'll get the best product, and you'll enjoy all the aromas and the act of actually doing the roasting. So you wanted to put another flavor into your beer or into your malt, instead of boiling it and trying to put it in later in the beer, where you could cause bacteria and those kind of things, or you're not able to, it may be too much flavor at one time. You're not going to know until the end product. Well, here you're able to spray if you want to. Any liquid, water-based liquid, like anise or maybe banana, cherry, those kind of things. This is the time you would do this, because it's the sugar part. So usually when you want those flavors, you want that to be more of a sweeter beer, so therefore you're going to be using the caramel malts to give you that body and flavor and such. So this would be the time that you would do that. So you're able to add just enough, you can adjust the volume, so you're able to control how much flavor or how much malt you're actually going to put into the beer and for what flavors. Okay, can you see how they get kind of glossy? You see that glossiness? That's the sugar that's been brought to the outside, and now it's being caramelized. Now the caramelization is based on time, right? We have the same basic temperature. We'll just keep rotating it, rotating, ouch. And we just keep rotating it now. And what we do is we smell and we'll taste. Yep. You can really taste that sweetness. And that sweetness is kind of, you don't even have to really chew into it. It's still pretty soft because we pulled it off so early in the stage of drying. But that's what needs to happen to get this to caramelize like this. Now, the toast is based on time. This is actually done. It's caramelized. I can have the flavor. I can taste the caramelization. And so this is done. Now I can just pull this off if I wanted to, and then go dry it out in the sun. This is going to stay hot for quite a while. What I usually do is I pour this into a metal pot, usually the one I cook my beer in, and I put the lid on. It'll actually stay this temperature for a long time. And if you want it to cool, you just take this pot off, let it sit, and it'll cool relatively quickly for berries anyway. And then we'll go from there. Now the next level, what we'll do on the next video, is will be the next level up for toast for your caramel malts. And as I said, this is your base caramel malt. It's good, and we put it back out in the sun, and it's pretty much perfect. So what I do is I usually do the sugar malts first because they come off the color first. And then as I finish this, then I'll do a pale malt. And so I'll actually put the pale malt on, and I'll toast it. And I'll toast it to whatever level I want. I usually start with a big batch. And then as the heat goes on, I'm able to pull off the amount of toast I like. So with the temperature fluctuating slightly, I'm able to pull off the first toasting, which would be like your pale or light malts, and then you just let the rest of it go. Then you pull off the others, each level at a certain point of time, and I'll show you that in future videos. And as the time goes on, the the toast in this keeps increasing until you get basically black charcoal. And each one of those is different levels. They're going to create different aromas and smells in your beers. And so this is the process. We start from the wettest. And this one, the caramel malts take the longest because they're wet. So the moisture has to be kind of evaporated as the sugars are being caramelized. So it takes a little bit longer than when the malt is already dry. After we get the caramelization on our berries, at that point, it's not completely dry. Remember, we just pulled it off. Now we're toasting it. It's not completely dry yet. It has to go back out into the sun and dry the rest of the way. We're just locking in the sugars to the starches that won't convert to alcohol. And then we'll bring it back outside to dry so that it'll go through the full process of drying so it'll store well. So now why this construction? As you can see, it's got an inner wall and an outer wall. Well, the outer wall is for the bigger piece of sheet, stainless steel that I have to do big batches. Of course, the fire then has to be bigger. And the first one is for the smaller batches. Another thing with this system being closed off like this, the air is able to get in and out the back. So it gives a nice consistent fire and you don't lose any heat. You can have a very small fire and yet be able to get all the heat you need. And you just raise or lower it as you need.